It has been a few days since the Olympics have ended, and unfortunately for Franz Wagner and company, Germany did not get a medal this year. Now, today we're going to talk about his overall performance in the Olympics and whether or not his shooting or lack thereof is going to be an issue going into next season. Obviously, it's been a very big talking point after he was able to get a $224 million max rookie scale extension from the Orlando Magic. But before we get into everything Franz Wagner and what he has been able to do this summer looking ahead to next season, guys, make sure that you are subscribed to the channel. 90.6% of you who are watching our videos are not subscribed, so join the 9.4%. Support us. It is the easiest and most effective way by subscribing to the channel. We're trying to build an Orlando Magic basketball community here on YouTube. Okay. Let's get into just a little bit of talk about what Franz Wagner did over this summer. So Franz obviously was pretty much the German national team's best player. I would say that Dennis Schroeder was probably the most important player. Whether or not Dennis Schroeder played well was whether or not the German national team won in any of the games was pretty much a direct correlation on whether or not Dennis Schroeder played well. When he shot really, really poorly, when he shot 4 of 26 from the field, 4 of 22 from the three-point line, Germany ended up, this is outside of their final 2 games, having the closest matchup that they had the entire group stage, the entire time that they were in the Olympics. It was essentially just, was Dennis Schroeder able to end up supporting Franz? And Franz wasn't there at every single point of the game, but I think it was clear that he was the most talented. Obviously, very young, 22 years old. The guy's going to be flying around the court. He earned the respect of guys like Dwayne Wade for whatever that's worth. Obviously, he's retired, but around the world of basketball Twitter, everybody was super jacked up about his performance. He dunked on the entire French team a couple times. He was playing extremely well, but obviously his shooting was a big issue. Now, I did want to get into just a little bit of general kind of talk. Now, this comes from Philip Rossman-Reich of the Orlando Magic Daily. He kind of describes the struggle that Wagner had in the latter portion of the Olympics. He obviously said that in the 2 elimination games he shot particularly poorly, but he didn't play particularly poorly. He just didn't have it going from the 3-point line. He had a really strong tournament, 18.5 points per game, 5.8 boards, shot 46.6% from the floor, but obviously despite the 56.1% true shooting percentage, people are going to talk about that 20% from 3. Now, it should be noted that this wasn't exactly a gigantic sample size. Obviously, he only played 7 games in the Olympics. So if he were to have a struggle, 7-game struggle at any point in the season, but get it together next year, you wouldn't even think about it, right? Because you get it together. You don't think that's not enough games that could define a season and make it a poor shooting season. Last year, if it was only 7 games, I think a lot of people would have said he didn't, it was just saying Franz from the 3-point line, but it was obviously a longer stint. When we take a look at some of the stats that he had last year, obviously this is going to be concerning. He shot 28% from the 3-point line. The game 7 against the Cleveland Cavaliers and that entire series, I've harped on it all off season, is really concerning. It's a stain on his resume, and it's the main reason that a lot of people don't want to pay him the $224 million. I would say outside of Magic fans and stuff like that. But I don't really think that this defines him as a player. Obviously, we do have an issue, and I want to talk about those 7 games that he did just play in a second. But when we do look back at last year, it is a little bit overstated how much that his bad shooting affected how effective he was as a player. He was still the second best player on an NBA playoff team that definitely had the chops to make it to that second round. Now, I'm not saying that they would have gone any further than the Cavs did or got any more games off the Celtics that the Cavs were able to get. But they were obviously capable of making it to the second round. You don't get to a game 7. They had a big lead on the road in that game 7. You don't do that on accident, right? So I think we're just looking at a player who is obviously coming into his own. He needs to clean up the shooting. If he shoots another year under 30%, then we have some serious concerns. We have some serious issues. But I think sometimes you just have some poor shooting slumps, and over time, even though that comes together to give you a 28% for the 3 for the season, sometimes that doesn't actually indicate that you're a poor shooter. He shot well in his first couple years in the league, so it's just one of those things where might just be an anomaly. Players have this sometimes where they just shoot poorly at times, and he was kind of figuring out that role. Paulo's been more of the first option, the offensive guy last year, and it will only continue to build, so he can just continue to kind of get into that role now. Let's get into kind of how he played in the Olympics. Obviously, like I said, he didn't play particularly poorly. He made the second team of the Olympics. He scored 18.5 points per game, 5.8 boards, 2.5 assists. Definitely didn't play well at all, and he had performances, like I mentioned, the French game, that were extremely impressive. He scored 22 points against Japan, despite shooting 2 of 8 from 3. He had 17 points against Brazil, despite shooting 0 of 6 from 3. He had 26 points against France, as I mentioned. That was an amazing game. He shot 2 of 5 from 3, but he was 8 of 15 from the field. He had 18 points against Greece. That was probably his worst overall shooting game, I would say. He was 8 of 17, which that's just a tick under 50%. His worst shooting game was probably the bronze medal game against Serbia, where he went 5 of 14. But most of these games are still pretty decently respectable outings. Obviously against France, he had the second matchup against France in the semis. He had 10 points. You would have liked to see a little bit more from him in that game, especially down the stretch. But he did hit a couple shots, especially late, and you just felt like it was respectable. He just didn't shoot a ton in the France game. They changed up their defense, and that is probably what concerned a lot of people. But you're not going to see that in the NBA because he's not going to be that first option. So ironically, despite him having to adjust to being that first option, adjust to being the second option, or the true take a step back second option to Paolo Banchero, I think he's going to actually benefit from that as time goes on, right? Because we saw when they were able to hone in on him in that France game in the semifinals, that's whenever the real shooting issues came about. Now, definitely wanted to talk about where he's going to go from here. I think, like I said, a lot of people are saying $224 million, you better get it together. You better make sure that you shoot the ball. But I think it's just important that he keeps the confidence. He keeps confidence within himself. He has turned a lot of people into believers. And as I've said, he's not going to be the first option, probably again, as long as Paolo Banchero and him are teammates. But seeing him as the first option, he was more than capable, and he didn't have a three-point shot. So I think a lot of people are just saying, oh my God, is he going to play really terribly this upcoming season, blow everything? Well, if he shoots poorly again, I still think he's a really, really good player and a borderline all-star player. That's a borderline all-star caliber player, especially, depending on how good the Magic are, he could end up actually making the all-star game, and statistically might not be any different. But I think it's just important for his confidence to continue, keeping Mo Wagner in the fold, just to be another guy there to support him. Obviously, that is his brother, and they have gone through a lot together as they were growing up, and they're obviously, as you could see, teammates. So as long as you keep him there, Mo Wagner in and on the team, around the team, and people like Paolo Banchero don't get too frustrated with him. Jalen Suggs doesn't start, not passing him the ball late in games. Then I think for the most part, you're looking at a guy who is going to have a long runway throughout this contract. Now, you'd like it to happen during the season to get his shot right, to get his confidence up, and to make sure that he can continue to play winning basketball for us. I'm very interested to know what you guys think in the comments below. Is this something that is concerning you? I know we paid this guy a lot of money, and you pay him $224 million. You'd not like to talk about his confidence or keeping his brother on the team or anything like that. This isn't a Giannis scenario, right? You don't want to have to keep his brother to have him play well. But despite all of this, I still believe he played well in the France game, or in both of the France games, and throughout the Olympics, obviously played pretty well despite not having a shot. So let me know what you guys think in the comments. Is this something that is concerning you personally? I think it's I think everybody can just relax on it. But that's all the time I have for today. Thank you guys for watching. I will see you guys next time with more Orlando Magic basketball content.